So far, we have looked at interacting with police officers when things are relatively calm. In this module, we will look at behaviors that actually escalate a confrontation with law enforcement. In other words, what drivers say and do that causes a police officer to get angry and irate. If you have been a police officer for any length of time, you are familiar with the concept called contempt of cop. This describes behavior by people toward law enforcement officers that is perceived as disrespectful or insufficiently deferential to their authority. When we go back and look at why a traffic stop became a confrontation, it's often because we have said something insulting to the officer or we have challenged their authority. Let's look at this idea in greater detail. Here is a list of 7 behaviors that you may be doing that will certainly end up down the path toward a full-blown confrontation. You should avoid making comments that directly challenge the authority of a police officer, or you will undoubtedly end up in a quarrel, or worse than that, a confrontation. All of these behaviors end up obstructing police business and adding to the length of time of the traffic stop. Take a minute to study this list, and we will look at several examples. Here is a list of 7 things you should never do when interacting with a police officer. This young man is refusing to follow directions, and he is challenging the authority of the police officer. The officer has told him that he will explain the reason that he pulled the driver over after he secures the man's ID. In this case, the driver is playing amateur attorney, and he is mistaken about the need to first provide his identification. Drivers challenge the authority when they argue with the police officer and delay the traffic stop, or they resist arrest or take off running away from the scene. Let's hear a direct challenge to the police officer's authority.
Are you a real policeman? I could swear that I saw you over at the mall last week, as a security guard.
Look, bro, I don't have to talk to you. In fact, I can just remain silent. The truth is, you work for me, since my taxes pay for your salary.
Look, I am a passenger. I don't have to tell you my name, and you have no right to ask me questions. Can I leave now?
You can give me a ticket, but you may regret it when my lawyer files a complaint with your boss.
In some cases, the conversation with a police officer will become heated and confrontational. You will need to lower the tension by following this 3-step process. It is during this situation that you should be extra careful about reaching for your identification. Let's explore a 3-step process that you should follow anytime you are in an intense argument with an officer. During a heated exchange with the police, you should follow these 3 steps in order to reach for your identification. Your first job is to put the officer at ease by expressing your willingness to cooperate. Quickly explain that you have no weapons that could harm the officer, all of the time keeping your hands on the steering wheel. Your second step is to announce your plan to move your hands in order to reach your documents. Tell the officer how you plan to move in this new direction. Once you have the ID, you need to put your hands back on the wheel. If the officer wants to place you in handcuffs, agree to be restrained and do not argue. Think of it as a temporary situation. And finally, do not flee from the scene. Let's recap the 3 modules that you have completed during this training. In the first module, we provided a close look at the first 3 minutes of a routine traffic stop. We put you in the shoes of a patrol officer, and we explored the things we could do to make a police officer trust the driver. In the second module, we covered the basics of communication during a traffic stop. You learned about what to do if you are asked about personal questions that have no relevance to the traffic stop. In this module, we talked about the behaviors that almost certainly escalate a negative situation into a confrontation. We covered 7 things that drivers do to challenge the authority of a police officer. Let's move on to the final module.